down the hammer and pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
Hey, what's going on, Savvy Investors? This is your friend, Steve VanCauwenbergh. You tuned in to the Savvy Radio Show, Savvy Podcast, whatever you want to call it. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that you're listening, and that's what's the great thing, because you're growing. That's the best thing. If you're not growing, what are you doing? You're dying. So today we're going to talk about how to grow, how to scale, how to go big. And I believe the only way you can do that is with other people. Maybe a partnership, a group of partnerships. A group that creates a partnership, whatever. You hear me. So I have been thinking about this for a long time, about partnerships. And, I get overwhelmed because I think I can do all things and I can't. And there's some things I'm really good at. There's some things I'm okay at. And there's some things I'm dismal failure at. And those are things that you should not be doing. If you're not passionate about something, you probably shouldn't be doing it. And you need to find a partner, someone else, and you can outsource this or whatever the case may be. But I think partnerships and opportunities for other people, they may not have the skills or talents that you have that you can contribute, or you can receive a contribution from somebody else. May it be capital, may it be the D personality, which is the driver, or it could be the analytical detailed, or even could be a legal aspect. Partnerships could be great. I've always kind of dabbled in them in a roundabout way. And I've always noticed that a lot of people just get, mute about it, mad about it, or even negative about it. Like, partnerships suck. And, and I think it boils down to, I wrote some notes, partnerships have a bad rap. And it could be you. What? Yep. You didn't set it up right. And I think that's what's important as an entrepreneur, as a business person. It's your responsibility to create partnerships. Have I failed in partnerships? Yes. Have I been burned? Oh, even in 2021, 2022, I have had a partnership and I got burned, and it was a long-term partnership. And, I'm responsible of it, but I think a lot of the mistakes that I've made, they weren't outlined. I didn't have a policy and procedure, I guess you would say. But I want to encourage you today, and you got to think of it like this. You can do better with more than one person. All right. It's a scripture and I can't think of it right now. It's like, two are better than one. Pity the man that falls down. It doesn't have a brother to pick him up. The strand of three cords is not easily broken. And I just think it could be a wonderful thing. My relationship with the accounting firm and several years now has been a wonderful thing. It's been a blessing in disguise. When you get two great people together in the same accord, let it be a marriage, it could be a dominating force. And also, like a marriage, if you get two irritable people, it could be a dismal failure. And I think you need to look at partnerships as a marriage and, go into that aspect knowing what your expectations are, and knowing or trying to get the expectations of the other individual or individuals. And so I have some partnerships I'm trying to develop right now. So here's the thing. If you're looking for a partnership, you need to find a partner with a growth mindset. And these are just some random notes. When I came across this article on Business Investor Africa. I know, it's like bizarre. And I started reading it and I was super inspired. And then I just wrote out my own little podcast, and then we're just going to go over what this gentleman said. But, if you're going to have a successful partnership, you got to find a partner. And if you don't have this skill, I definitely wish you would acquire this, but you have to have the growth mindset, and you have to be willing to change, and you have to be willing to grow or to this is my notes. I couldn't even read my own dang notes. You have to be willing to let go. And I have been fortunate as a coach or whatever, and I've come across the most bizarre people in my lifetime in a short amount of time. And, I was recently coaching someone that they were in a partnership together. They were two good friends, and they acquired an asset together, and they're two different personalities. But they're good friends, but they're two different personalities, two different ways of how they do business. Well, if one person is conservative and one person is kind of wild, well, there's going to be a conflict. And so, I was trying to walk this individual through this process, and, the one individual wasn't necessarily complying with the other one. And I'm like, hey man, welcome to the world of relationships. But if you want to get into a relationship with someone, and I think you should, because you're just going to get bigger and better and reach more people or do more things that you could have never done by yourself. And I can go over a ton of examples, but that may be another time. But so to get going, let's recap here. You got to be willing to change. Okay. You got to be willing to let go. Okay. And you got to be willing to fail. And you got to be willing to say no to comfortability. Sometimes you're going to have to tell your partner no. And it's a healthy no. It's like, I don't agree with that, but I support you. Ooh, I agree with this and you may not. And so I have had partnerships before where I am more of an aggressive individual. Like I'm like, put the pedal to the metal. And I think I work really good with more of a conservative person because they tie me down. Now, there's some partnerships that I've had in the past where they don't want to spend money, and then thus we don't grow. But you have to ask yourself, the question is, where is it going? How am I applying in this relationship, and where do I want to go from here? There's been many times where I've come to, not many times, but I would say at least once or twice, that I would go to a partner and say, hey, I just want to be bought out. There's an individual that I had a real estate relationship with, and we were doing really good on deals, and we acquired 7 properties in a package, and it was turning to be a nightmare. And I can tell that a lawsuit was looming in this acquisition, and it's a subject to, and it's a disaster. And I was like, hey, you could just buy me out. It's cool with me. And here's the number. And so sometimes you might want to write that into your partnership agreement, but you definitely need a partnership agreement. And the cool thing about having a partnership is that you have separate skill sets that you can apply to each other. Now, you got to look for someone that has integrity. You have to have integrity, and this individual has integrity. And only way you determine that is over time. Okay. Now, just recently, I've just experienced this thing called the honeymoon effect. I don't know. It's probably Google it up. I don't know. I just made that up. Literally, I just said the honeymoon effect. And what do I mean by the honeymoon effect? Meaning like I am just notorious for getting into a relationship, maybe business, maybe being a friend. And I get so excited and I just think, sky's the limit and this person's amazing. And then the ball starts crumbling. And I don't know why I do that. I see the potential in people. I see what they can do. What I can do, what we could do together. And then I realized this individual may not be the right person for me. And I've figured this out, that it's taken 6 months. And so if you're going to do a partnership of any sorts, and even loan money, there's this thing called the honeymoon effect that I just created. And it's probably out there. Probably Google it up. But you've got to wait at least 6 months and to really determine if this individual or this agreement is going to be beneficial for you. So if you're going to start a business tomorrow, you might want to outline some things, and we're going to go into that here in a minute, but you kind of just want to just take it in stride and realize in 6 months, I'm going to have a better understanding. And I have had this situation happen to me 2 times to count where everything's going to go great. I put the cash in and ready to roll. And then I'm like, man, 3 months in, I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why did I do this decision? I don't need to do this. And it's becoming kind of a frustrating situation. Take my little advice, wait 6 months before you get into it. Now, you can start working on this business process. You can start defining the roles, and we'll get into that in a minute, but you can start going through the process. But when you really ink the sheet of paper, you really have an understanding of this individual, know about their habits, purchasing habits, what type of skills that they have, Where do they come from? What kind of family do they have? I know this is getting personal for some, but what do you mean you need to know their family? Like, how do they work? Where do they come from? When the rubber meets the road, when all hell breaks loose and you lose all your customers, how are they going to respond? Do they get upset about little things? All these things are important when running a business. And I think a lot of people discount partnerships because they're not willing to work at it. Just like a healthy marriage, just like a successful business, just like a partnership, you have to work at it. And to the degree, at least a weekly thing, I would say almost a daily thing. When I work in my partnership, I'm considering my partner every time I make a decision. I'm considering where this is going to take us. And have I made mistakes? Absolutely. Have I dropped the ball? Probably more times than I would like to admit. But the reality is we have a respect and a mutual understanding, and we're trying to grow this enterprise, and we have these dreams and aspirations, and where do we want to take them? And they're on the same page. So that's the most important thing. Are you on the same page? And this partner that you're looking for, are they consistent? Do they respond to your phone calls? Do they text? How long do they take to text you back? I think I have a frustration in my side that people want instant responses, but when I communicate to them or talk to them, it takes them forever to get back to me. Is that kind of partnership I want? If they're dirty now, they're going to be dirty later. If they can't do their finances now, are they going to be able to do their finances later? Just like any kind of common sense stuff, okay? And a partnership, okay, this is my final thought till we get into this other article, but the partnership should be your passion. It should be a passion for each other and for the business. If you're just doing it for the money, I'm telling you, it's not going to go as well as you think it is. So I found this article that started this podcast, and it's called The Exclusive Business and Insider Africa Exclusive 10 Valuable Lessons That Can Set Up Your Business Up for Massive Success by Nigerian serial entrepreneur, Alua Agua. Okay, of course, I probably screwed that up. And he just wrote out these 10 valuable lessons, and some of them really struck a chord. So I'm just going to go off his titles, make stuff up, or relate to things in our world as real estate investors in general. So here we go. 2 or more good heads are always better than one. We talked about that just a little while ago. There's some things I can't do without someone else. There's people I can't reach. And the older that I become, the more, I guess, blinded I am. And just the awareness of someone else. The way I grew up in the streets, I've connected with some attorneys recently, and, they have a different mindset than I do. I grew up in the trenches, more of a hustler, and I can bring that perspective to someone that never has lived on the streets before, right? So 2 good heads or more are better than one. All right, number 2, getting a good partner or co-founder can be tricky. Believe it or not, the precision you need to getting a co-founder is almost similar that you need in getting a spouse. We just talked about that. Like a marriage, partnerships are expected to last long, and we spend at least 8 hours working every day. Getting that decision wrong can be detrimental to you and your business, as you need to be meticulous at getting a partner. Do not leave it to chance. That's what I'm trying to get to. This is what inspired me when I was reading this a couple weeks ago. I was like, man, it just sounds so weird. Like, yeah, partnerships are in my marriage. And we just say it so flippantly. It could be a life suck, or it could be the most awesome thing. And we really need to take time, at least 6 months, to get an understanding. I remember being in college, my roommate at the time, Preston Smith. He's on Facebook. He's a totally different person. He was a super engineer before, and now he's like this motorcycle guru now. But I remember he said like the 3-year rule, and I was like, what? What's the 3-year rule? Of course, I was fast and furious and started dating people and trying to get them married. This dude is like, you can't get to know someone at least 3 years, minimum 2 years. And I was like, now at 40-something years old, that makes sense. So just take your time and figure it out. Number 3, regular conflicts with your partner could be a red flag. I was just thinking about my partnership that I have with Rose Taylor as the accountant business that we have, P3 Accounting. And, I realize we hardly ever, I don't think I can remember a time that we ever conflicted. Have we bumped heads? Sure. Do I want to spend more money and grow the business? And she's more methodical about it. And I'm like, let's just do it. Let's just, and she's usually right. Like 9 times out of 10, I don't think she's ever wrong. I mean, she just brings a different perspective. But see, I would have probably spent too much time and too much energy and too much money on the wrong thing when we haven't really focused on this thing. And I think that's what's so good about a partnership is that they can see things that you can't see. Number 4, consider working with people you know. Absolutely. Before I got in a partnership with Rose, I knew her for several years. I've known her for almost 10 years, 8 years at least. And I think it's good. It speeds up the time of getting to know someone. If you can visit their home, you could see their personality. All these things are important, and it's better than knowing a stranger. A stranger, you don't know how they think. You don't know where they've come from. And I think those things are important. This business relationship should be successful. We want it to be successful. We don't get into a marriage to get divorced. We don't get into a marriage to lose 50% of everything we've owned. No, we get into a marriage for many reasons. What are those? We get into a business relationship so we can grow, so we can scale, so we can do more things and help more people. All right. If you can't succeed in life all by yourself. Yeah, you can do it great, get a good return, but to do it well, you got to have other people helping you, other people working, and I believe you have to have partnerships. Number 5, agree on all the terms before you start anything. I take this approach. He says, when starting a business with a partner, do not assume anything. True. You should have all the necessary agreements prepared by a lawyer and signed by all parties. This agreement is legally binding contract that holds each other's partnership interests and stake. It should be created in the beginning before the company commences. I agree. This is how I do it. I kind of get the ball rolling with the individual, maybe work out the business plan, meet regularly to get an understanding, and so we're on the same page, because it's just not that easy just to call an attorney, hey, we're going to have a partnership. You really have to define all the roles, all the goals, and who's going to do what. And that's the next thing I want to say here in a second. But the reality is, I would really kind of get to know and kind of get to know to work each other and work with each other and kind of get a feeling, maybe several meetings, maybe get some things on paper, maybe set some expectations and set some, tasks. Hey, by next week, can you write out your expectations? And I would say so loosely, okay, what's your goal on the marketing piece? Or what, if you know that person's definition, maybe they're going to handle the finances. Maybe they can get a spreadsheet built up and you see this and it wowed you, right? I kind of do all that stuff in the beginning, because when you sign these legal documents and then closing these legal documents, I guess I'm losing a word here, but closing it down is more headache than it is. I want to get to know you beforehand and see your work ethic and see, how you communicate, see how you send the documents over in a timely manner, blah, blah, blah. Number 6, defines everyone's roles and responsibilities. I've been working on this podcast for a long time, and with my businesses, and when you scale, what is the role that you do in the business, and what's the role that you would like that other person to do, and have them do this, action or step on their own, and then you guys convene. This is something that's really important. I'm starting a couple new businesses right now, and I'm so excited, blah, 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 the honeymoon, but do I really have the roles defined? And when you get these roles defined, then you can work out what the cost for those roles, if you're going to hire, say, a sales intake person, or what's going to happen after this certain time. The roles and responsibilities are important. Usually my gifts and talents are sales and marketing. And what's the other point? Or what are we both good together, and what are you going to do? My partnership that I have with Rose, she has a strong personality. We have a similar personality, which would be considered a D, which is a driver. And so when I know that my role, when she's speaking, I don't say anything. When she's addressing the staff and the team, I let her be the leader. Never question her, always support her. Now, it's rare, but when she steps down and says, okay, you need to be the leader or the D at that moment, then I do, and then she supports me. But we don't overspeak each other. I don't interrupt her and make her look lesser than, okay? But I know what her role is at that specific time, and majority of the time when it comes to that aspect. Now, when we're in a meeting together and it's just us and we're planning, it's who takes on a totally different role. She has a different role. She's more of a number cruncher or budgeteer, all those things that I'm not good at, and I may be the more of a marketing or leader or some other side. And the great thing is that we know each other's strengths and weaknesses, kind of, and we're still developing those, and we allow each other to pursue those things. Is it nerve-wracking? Absolutely. She's given me the task to handle this trade show. She probably can do it better, but what's her skill set and what's her time worth that she can focus on these other things while I can do these things? And that's just how you scale a business. This is how you grow. Number 7, you've got to do the ownership structure. Who gets percentages? And he says this is where you determine what percentage of the company each member should own. Shareholding in the business should be based on each person's contribution. And this is where I failed in my previous relationships. I like them, or they bring a lot of things to the table, but they don't bring any contribution. It's really difficult to value someone's sweat equity, okay? It's always easier to value it by the actual physical number. And this gets kind of colluded and complicated at times because they may not have money, but you really need their skill set. You really need a coach right here. You really kind of need to consult an attorney. When I talk to an attorney on that, they always roll their eyes. Well, this person's what are they contributing? Well, they're really good at what are they doing monetarily? Okay, so this is just a weird situation on the structure, and we can go on a whole 10 podcast on how should you structure a business. There's generic ways, but someone can bring a very powerful skill set that's not economical but has value. And I've seen this in a partnership that I have where I bring a lot of knowledge to the table and not so much economic money, but I get the same tenure. So I don't know. This is another subject, but you need to structure this percentage-wise, and maybe in a business plan that I'm writing right now, we can cover that at another episode. Number 8, agree on a company's mission and vision. This is always a moving target, and this is something that you definitely need to work on, especially in the beginning. This is your thesis. This is your foundation. This is, I think, the most important thing, so we're all on the same page. And he says one of the most important things that partners should discuss at the beginning of a business is the company's mission and vision. The vision defines the company's business and why we exist, while the vision defines the company's long-term goals. You do not want to get halfway into a business and suddenly a partner A wants 1, 2, 3, while partner B wants 4. And this is true. What are we going to do? We're going to build it up to 10 million and then we're going to sell it. I always try to set simple goals, which is sometimes, or small goals, which I think I'm going to change that process because we hit them so fast. And then what? I usually like to go into a business. I just want to make $2,000 a month or $500 a month. I know my goals are small because I know I could reach them. But, one partnership I had was like, hey, when we get to, X amount, do we want to sell? And we were working towards that. And then we built the business up to this point, and then we decided not to sell. And so you really need to have the mission for the company written down, and then each other's vision or your group of the vision. What does it look like? What do we want to, what's the end? And I always, when I do my partnership agreements, there's always a way out. And I think that's a safe environment. If you're not happy, you can buy out or you can sell your shares or however you want to work it. Okay, then you got to have a breach clause, is what I call number 9. He calls it the agree and disillusion terms. Partnerships go wrong sometimes, so all your stakeholders should take the terms of disillusion into consideration at the start of the business. Absolutely. If the dude does not show up to the quarterly meetings, what's happening? That's an example. Outline the circumstances that could lead to dissolution of your company and spell out winding up procedures and distributions of the company's asset. If someone dies, if it stops operation, what happens? I think also this is critical because people change, people get sick, people have kids, people change. Divorces happen. You've got to agree on a breach clause, and it's hard. And keep in mind, you can always have an addendum. You can always go back and edit this when you mature. When I started one business, the way it looks today is totally different than 10 years ago. Can I go back and change it? Sure. But it's an active living document within sorts. And what also happens if you died, and how does this get willed to who and what? And is that going to help that other partner? And maybe you have a contingency in there that they can buy it out if it's a second generation. Sky's the limit. Just the creativity is important. And then number 10, the final commitment. He says, in my experience, partners that do not commit financially are hardly fully vested in the business. You guys know this creates value. If it gets something for free, they treat it like crap. Since they have nothing to lose, their business goes down. They tend to do somewhat lackadaisical towards the business. As a business owner, you should ensure that all partners contribute financially to the business. It's tough, but that's just how it is. Pony up, ladies and gents. There's a financial commitment. Just like an owner finance, if they don't put money down, they're going to tear it up. And the higher they down, the better they're going to take care of the business or the house. And the higher it is, the most likely they're not going to bounce out on you, just like a partnership. And number 11, he has a tip. It says, if you can start the business on your own, please do. Not every business requires a partner, but if it's necessary, you can bring a partnership in later. Save yourself the headache in dealing with unproductive partners. So true. And, and I think when he says non-productive, you really need to spell out what they're doing in their work ethic. I'm telling you, I can see why people don't like partnerships, because it could be a nightmare to be partnered with someone and you feel like you're doing all the work and they're not. But see, here's the thing that I've seen in my own life and my own businesses. People forget where they came from. This deal could have never have happened if that individual didn't have the money. And I'm so loyal to the people that have helped me that even after the business is gone 10, 15 years later, if I see that individual, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for you. And I think that you need to take that approach. Never forget where you came from. Never forget the first time that you filled out or you signed the HUD statement and you signed that document. Never forget where you came from. And I think your life will be much better. Anyway, my name is Steve VanCauwenbergh. I know this was way unorganized. I threw this together, but I thought it was important. It was on my heart, and hopefully it's on your heart. If you have a partnership that you want to talk about, man, the more I help other people in this area, the better I become. And I'm being selfish here. There's some tips that I've learned from people that have called me and said, hey, I have a situation with this individual. How would you handle it? I'm like, I didn't think of that, but let's work on this together. I think we're better together than we're on our own little islands. I think it's time for us to rise up as a nation, as a people, and as business owners to just encourage each other and help each other. And the more that we help each other, the bigger we become. And what's the goal? So we can do more and help more people. My name's Steve VanCauwenbergh. Totally stoked that you got this far in this podcast. It's really cool that you've listened to a bunch of them. It's super cool when you text me and you were impacted. And my homie the other day said, hey, man, I got to the podcast. Sorry, I was taking so I appreciate that. It really fills my cup. It's always at the random time, but I need encouragement as well. And so do you. Let you know that Steve VanCauwenbergh says, I'm proud of you. You read this far or listened this far, and congrats. Go out there and buy assets.
Thanks for listening to the Savvy Radio Show. Glide online and listen to our other motivating episodes at savvyradioshow.com. Connect on Twitter at LandlordBook and always be buying assets.